on CVM TV.
Tell me an animal with spots.
A bear.
I'm gonna tell you right now, if bear's up there, I'm taking off all my clothes right here.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
Well, the much anticipated report from the Integrity Commission into the statutory declarations of the Prime Minister Andrew Holness, that report has been tabled in Parliament and is being digested right across the world, it seems, far and wide, by those with an interest. The Prime Minister rose today in the House of Representatives to offer a defense of his integrity and to speak to some of the main findings in the report prepared by the Director of Investigations at the Commission and informed by other parties in that Commission of Parliament. And we will look at the main findings, the main aspects of that report today on Lead Story, along with playing for you what the Prime Minister had to say in his own defense when he stood up to speak today in the House of Representatives. Welcome to Lead Story on this day, this Tuesday in September, a day that was highly anticipated, or that, well, was highly anticipated for many reasons, not least of which is the fact of the tabling in the House of Representatives, the tabling in the Parliament of that report from the Integrity Commission looking at the statutory declarations of the Prime Minister, which have gone uncertified for 3 cycles. No, there is no raging debate about whether the Prime Minister was being investigated for illicit enrichment, whether or not he got such a notification from the Integrity Commission, or whether or not he was just asked for more information as they looked into the statutory declarations, which he says he obliged them by providing. And, it depends on how you look at it as to the conclusion you will draw about whether or not there was an illicit enrichment probe afoot, and whether indeed the fact of you being investigated for illicit enrichment is a crime in and of itself, at least in the eyes of the public. But that aside, the report, as we noted, tabled today. And we took some sections out of the report for you just to highlight what it is that busied the mind of the Director of Investigations, Kevin Stevenson. Now, be very clear about something. Where the report is concerned, there was one issue that caused the Director of Investigation to recommend that the Prime Minister be charged for knowingly failing to declare bank accounts that he had. That was the basis on which the Prime Minister was recommended to be charged. Kevin Stevenson looked through the body of evidence, the body of material that he had in his possession, and he said, look, based on the fact of you knowingly failing to declare your interest in these 4 bank accounts, I am recommending that you be charged with that offense, or for that offense. That recommendation was made by him. The Director of Corruption Prosecutions, whose job it is to then take a recommendation on board and proceed with a criminal charge, or to say there is no basis for a criminal charge, Keisha Prince Kamika, she said to that recommendation from Stevenson, no, there is not enough, there's nothing here for me to proceed with charging the Prime Minister. Now, outside of that, there were many more aspects to an investigation that ran for 3 years and which involved the participation of an international forensics examiner to look into the Prime Minister's affairs. 177 pages long. The report from the Integrity Commission was, so a lot more happened around that climactic point, because it's not as if there were 10 issues on which charges were recommended for. It was just that issue, but there were way more things around it that will cause people to ask various questions of the Prime Minister. Now, as I noted, we pulled various aspects of the report out just so you could get an understanding of what it is that the Integrity Commission has taken so much time to look into, as it sought to see whether or not the Prime Minister was living up to the expectations of integrity, of honesty, of fairness, of true use of taxpayers' money, staying true to taxpayers by using their funds in the right way and not trying to elicit himself at the expense of the Jamaican taxpayer, it is time to look at some of the aspects of the report from the Integrity Commission that sought to satisfy all those things. All right, let's go with the graphics that we have now, because there's a part of the report concerning accounts that the Prime Minister has, business accounts, from which money was moved from one account to the other. Now, may we get the first graphic, please, so that we can look at the movement of those funds? All right, we don't seem to have that. Let's take the break and come right back. This is Lead Story here on CVM TV. When we come back from the break, we'll have those for you.
Nigga, feel we culture, yo.
New beginning, we winning, so share our spirit where you living, yeah.
Share it.
I make we all a one bar, you don't know we come from far.
From far, anytime we rap, feel we country. Rear rum, it have to come with me.
No matter with the bad vibes.
Poor rear rum, a celebration time. Rear rum,
I feel we culture.
rear rum,
Make we show ya Jamaican culture.
and if you overproof from, we just have to do we culture.
The battle is heating up as two former champions of Manning Cup face off in Zone F. 31-time winners Jamaica College will be facing off with 7-time champions Excelsior High. JC versus Excelsior. See it happen live Thursday at 3:30 p.m. on CVM TV.
So the Prime Minister, the Director of Investigations, Kevin Stevens, has said that he pursued with an investigation based on a recommendation by the commissioners of the Integrity Commission. The Integrity Commission's body of commissioners chaired, of course, well, the board is chaired by retired Justice Seymour Panton. This is the broad statement we're going to show you first of what Stevens says about the oxygen for his investigation, the charge given to him, the directive given to him by the commissioners of the Integrity Commission, and the pieces of legislation that he was using to pursue the investigation into the Prime Minister. So if we get that first graphic now concerning, right, so the investigation into the 2021 statutory declaration is based on a referral by the commissioners pursuant to Section 14, subsection 5 of the Corruption Prevention Act, that's the CPA, and the Integrity Commission Act, that's the ICA. Particularly, Stevens says, he was concerned, or there were concerns, that Holness owned assets disproportionate to his lawful earnings for the declaration period, and that he made false statements in his statutory declaration for the stated period. So that's what prompted the investigation. There was concern that, one, the Prime Minister owned assets that were in excess of what his earnings were, so he owned more than his earnings could support him owning, and that he made false statements in his statutory declarations for the stated period. The referral from the commissioners, among other things, inter alia, indicated a few things. So if we move on. Holness's net worth, a summary now of the findings from the commission. Holness's net worth was calculated, they say, based on information that was included in his statutory declaration for the year ended 2021. So they arrived at the numbers that they arrived at based on information that Holness put into his statutory declarations for the year ended 2021, along with additional information that he was asked to provide over time. They say his net worth grew by $51,555,000 over the 5-year period that ended December 31, 2021. So up to December 2021, that would be a 5-year period, would be from 2017. So 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. So between 2017 and 2021, his net worth increased, they said, by just under $52 million. They say that that calculation included the conversion of income and net worth from US to Jamaican dollars. They say unexplained changes, to go back to the previous slide, yes, unexplained changes in the net worth calculated at $4,491,000 for the year ended. Now, stay with the numbers here now. They're saying his net worth grew by just under $52 million over a 5-year period. They're not saying that anything was wrong with that. What they are saying that something was wrong with was what they deemed to be unexplained changes to the tune of $4,491,000. In other words, though your net worth grew by this figure, $51,555,000 for the 5-year period, what you earned, came up to $4.5 million more than what you say you have. So there's a gap. There's a $4.5 million gap for that period. They say although Wholeness's net worth appeared to align with income for some years, the growth of the net assets of companies for which Wholeness and close family members are majority shareholders and the actual contributions of minority shareholders needed to be examined further because there were questions that made his net worth increase unexplained, and that these the net worth had to do with the net assets of companies for which he, Wholeness, close family members, and who are majority shareholders, and other people who are minority shareholders, it needed further examination. Let's move on. Some of the companies involved now, so they name some of the companies. One company, Imperium, which is wholly owned by Wholeness as a holding company. Then another company, Positive Media, set up by Wholeness initially, used for managing his public image. In 2022, they say he forfeited his shares, which were transferred to his son, Andrew, with Mark Azan, a close friend of Wholeness over the years. He was also a shareholder, so he gave up his shares to his son, Andrew Matthew Wholeness, and Mark Azan. Estate Bridge. The report does not explicitly state the ownership structure of Estate Bridge, but it is indicated it is another company with connections to Andrew Wholeness. Then, all right, so, okay, good. Imperium, it says, received $70 million from Positive Media and returned $51.3 million, resulting in a net surplus, if you do the subtraction, of $18.797 million. It says Estate Bridge deposited $44 million from Imperium, had a remaining balance of $40.66 million after making significant withdrawals, including payments to Imperium. So the examination of Wholeness's standing, true standing relative to what he had declared, they examined these significant transactions, deposits and withdrawals, transfers between the companies that Wholeness, his family members, majority shareholders and minority shareholders had. These were the subject of the examinations by the Integrity Commission. Let's move on. Positive Media, facing a net withdrawal of $18.85 million, shows signs of financial strain despite receiving $52.9 million in deposits. And they say Green Emerald, another company connected to Wholeness, loaned $20.2 million to Positive Media and received $24.9 in transfers, resulting in an unexplained surplus of $4.3 million. Let's go on. The report highlights a bond purchased by Wholeness for $94,000 US. The investigation found only $61.892 was funded by Wholeness, with the remaining $32,000 US coming from Positive Jamaica Foundation, a charity where Wholeness was a director. Now, in his response in Parliament earlier today, Wholeness spoke to the issue of the bond and why the issue of the bond was problematic because of the denomination of the amount that was said to have been in question, and an error, he says, germinated from something done by the bank, and the Integrity Commission's acknowledgement that the error germinated from what the bank wrote as the figure that was connected to the bond purchase. We're going to hear what the Prime Minister said after this break.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
Ray and Never, feel we culture. Yo!
New beginning, we winning, so share our spirit where you living, yeah.
Share it.
I make we all a one bar, you don't know we come from far.
From far, anytime we rep, feel we country. Rear rum, it have to come with me.
No matter with the bad vibes.
Poor rear rum, a celebration time. Rear rum.
I feel we culture.
Rear rum.
Make we show ya Jamaican culture.
Ray and Never, you overproof from we just have to do with culture.
You know my heart goes crazy when you take the lips to time. Let's explore our love. We'll leave the world behind. Can you feel this?
It's a schoolboy football, September 7 to December 14 on CVM TV.
Back with us on Lead Story, trying to distill for you in the time we have a very complex investigation that the Integrity Commission had to do to satisfy itself that the Prime Minister was not trying to illicitly enrich himself. And it's a thing to consider, because the Prime Minister, as the most senior politician in the land, the chairman of cabinet, the most powerful individual in Jamaica, must be above reproach. So his financial dealings must be squeaky clean, and there must be no suggestion that he, in his position as Prime Minister, is trying to leverage that to take money from the public purse or to otherwise enrich himself corruptly. That is without question, that is the mission of the Integrity Commission. I can imagine that these details are uncomfortable for some people watching who are avowed supporters of the Prime Minister. But beyond that, we must have someone in high office who can't be said of them that they are taking from the public purse or otherwise illicitly enriching themselves. That is the basis of why we are here talking about this Integrity Commission report. So what did the report serve up? What were the key findings of the report? Again, I repeat, the Prime Minister was recommended for a charge by the Director of Investigations for knowingly failing to declare bank accounts. The Director of Corruption Investigation made that recommendation. The Director of Corruption Prosecution said no, there is not enough evidence, plus the substance of the allegations that he knowingly failed to make a declaration were not as strong as the substance of his explanation. So his explanation for those 4 accounts and for not disclosing them is greater than the substance of the claim that he knowingly failed to declare, so no charge there. Beyond that, the issue of a bond came up, as we showed you in that last slide before the last break. The issue of a bond, and Holness explained in the House of Representatives today that that whole issue germinated from an error made by his bank. In other words, they were supposed to transfer a Jamaican dollar amount, but they instead said they transferred a US dollar amount. He said he spoke to them about it, and eventually the correction was made. But by the time the correction was made, the Integrity Commission had already picked up on it and were pursuing to see how it reconciled with the Prime Minister's declarations. We have the Prime Minister speaking in the House of Representatives to the key findings of the report, and in his own words, you will hear and judge for yourself whether you think there is more than the Prime Minister says there is, or whether you take him at his word. Let's go.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your permission, and thank you, members, for your indulgence. Mr. Speaker, on Thursday, September 5th, 2024, the Integrity Commission submitted an investigation report, ruling, and special report to Parliament concerning an investigation into my statutory declarations for the year 2021. The reports have now been tabled, and I have since had a chance to read the concluding paragraphs of the ruling of the Director of Corruption Prosecution, the 5-page summary, and peruse the recommendations and conclusions. While acknowledging that the report together totals just under 200 pages, the parts that I have read appear to give a sufficient sense of the findings. First, I welcome the fact that the report is finally tabled 2 years since this process began. I also take note of the fact that the Commission tabled both the report and the ruling of the Director of Corruption Prosecution at the same time. The last time this was not done. Based on what is said in the summary, queries were triggered because it is alleged that I had omitted bank accounts from my declarations, and one of these accounts was incorrectly reported as a US dollar balance by a financial institution. These matters were cleared as the accounts in question, by my recollection, were dormant, previously reported, and the balance in them were around Jamaican $3,000 and 200 euros. Subsequently, my declarations were once again referred for further scrutiny for accuracy and completeness. Other accounts were identified and alleged to be belonging to me, but undeclared. Some of these accounts were opened by my parents as far back as 1975, and my name later added, probably while I was still a child. Many Jamaicans add their children to their accounts for survivorship reasons and in the event of emergencies. I have never claimed these as my assets, and I am satisfied that the Director of Corruption Prosecution ruled that there was insufficient evidence to support claims that I intentionally omitted bank accounts from my declarations, and that there is greater evidence to support my explanation as opposed to evidence to the contrary. I also note that no other matter in the report was referred to the authorized authority, that is, the Director of Corruption Prosecution. The summary of the report outlined that my personal financial affairs from 2018 to 2023 was examined, including associate private third-party businesses and transactions. Over 3,600 transactions were examined, 28 bank accounts, over 80 witness statements collected. This effort to pursue me and my affairs led to the hiring of an international forensic accounting examiner for 6 months. As far as I am aware, only my 2021 declaration was submitted for investigation. After this most thorough interrogation of my personal affairs, which is not in any way connected to public funds or a benefit resulting from my office, they were unable to conclude regarding illicit enrichment. Nonetheless, they concluded that in one of the 5 years they examined, 2022, there was unexplained growth in my net worth of 1.9 million Jamaican dollars, or less than 1% of my total net assets. I reject this finding based on materiality and significance. And while I have not had a chance to fully review the specifics of their calculations, just a cursory review of their formula, I have seen an error in figures they have used in their calculations. And therefore, I challenge this finding on incorrect use of data. I reject the finding that I acquired an asset for which the source of funds is not adequately explained. The Commission, in its own report, pointed out that this whole episode started with an incorrect statement from a bank. It started with an incorrect statement from a bank. A bank gave a balance verification that I had funds in US dollars, which was incorrect. So too was the asset in question, the subject of errors by the financial institution that managed the asset. While I authorized the transaction, from the outset of the acquisition of the asset in 2019, I was unaware that the financial institution had assigned an amount in error to my account from an associated company. A year later, the investment instrument, a bond, was called by the issuer, and the financial institution made another error and pooled my funds with the associated company. As soon as I discovered this pooling, which is acknowledged in the report, I alerted the institution and instructed that the accounts be correctly separated. However, the initial incorrect assignment was not corrected at that time. I only became aware of the discrepancy when the institution alerted me in June of this year, and once it was brought to my attention,